If you're a maintenance supervisor for a commercial property, you've had to deal with everything from leaky faucets to flickering light bulbs. But nothing's worse than that ancient boiler that's lived in the building since the day it was built, 50 years ago. It's enough to make anyone lose their cool. That's where Grainger comes in. With industrial-grade products and dependable fast delivery, Grainger can help with any challenge, from worn-out components to everyday necessities. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
The SHR Media Network.
The best late-night conservative talk show in America, Sackheads Radio. And listen, there are no people better on the air to give you the best in conservative talk than Sackhead Sean and Sackhead Clint. And we're working on the immigration papers for a certain other guy who happens to work here too. For those who are tuning in around the world to the best in late-night conservative talk, Sackheads Radio. The best late-night conservative talk show in America. In America.
And in this web was a large, I'm pretty sure it was the biggest spider I've ever seen.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us here on the Sackheads Radio Show, live on the SHR Media Network. Thank you so much to the exceptional one, Ken McClinton. You got to check out his show at theexceptionalconservative.com. Such a great show, great friend. A lot of great stuff he talked about. If you catch the replay here on SHR or on the Spreaker, it's definitely worth it. Sackhead Clint will be joining me telephonically this evening. It seems like we can't get in the studio together, but we're working on it. We have a ton to talk about. Obviously, the debates just occurred, wrapping up about 30 minutes ago. Dan Butcher, the second best newsman in the business. Old number 2, as I like to call him, or the Deuce. Dan Deuce will be joining us at about 30 minutes or so to cover the debates and all the wonderful things with that. We're also going to talk about China, the island, the Navy sending a ship around, and impeachment proceedings. We got a lot going on tonight. I'm not going to lie. We have a lot going on, and I'm really excited. But first of all, if you're listening via Spreaker, Live 365, or wherever you possibly get us, make sure you jump into the chat room. Go to shrmedia.com. On the right-hand side of the page, about halfway down, click Live Chat. There'll be a lot of good people in there right now chatting, and I hope you jump in there and stick around. Paul Ryan's going to be the next GOP speaker. We're going to talk about that. I know we touched on it a little bit last week. I want to see if Clint's little love for Paul Ryan is the same or not, but we'll see. And all that. But I got to tell a story. Anyone who listens to the show knows that my good friend Clint calls me the blatant bigot. I like to think as a goof. I think he just likes to point fingers. So earlier today, I live in California. We're in California. We talk about that. My son, my 5-year-old, goes to a school that has a large Mexican population, Hispanic, Spanish, whatever you want to call them. Mexican. Most of their families are from Mexico that go to it. I told a lot of people this story, and I'm definitely going to get grief for it. But my son, who 2 weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago now, fell off one of the play structures that's 8.5 feet, 10 feet in the air and landed on his face, was on the same play structure. He was starting to do almost the exact same thing he did when he fell. I yell at the top of my lungs, "No way, Jose," which is a saying I've been saying my entire life. Do you see where I'm going with this? Stand by. Before school, hundreds of kids in the playground, I yell, "No way, Jose," out loud. I am not joking when I say 5 young children stopped and looked at me. I wanted to laugh, cry, and climb in a hole all at the exact same time. I swear on my soul, I did not mean anything by it. Obviously, my son's name is not Jose, it's James. And I was worried that he was going to fall. And it got me, I told a couple friends and we had a good laugh about it. And then I told a couple other people and they were appalled that I would use that saying. No way, Jose, which is a saying I've said my whole life I grew up with on the East Coast. Maybe we use it more, and I just didn't know. But it got me on the thinking of political correctness yet again. And Ken's show earlier talked about, political correctness and policing, but political correctness in general. And how, once again, when I've told people that story that I think is funny, listen, as much as some people don't want to believe it, some of the funniest things that we deal with in life are things that really happen. And even if they're not considered 100% politically correct, it doesn't mean that they're not funny. We have a segment on the show that we talk about occasionally, funny or racist. This one will apply. Me yelling, no way, Jose, to my son on a schoolyard that has a majority of Hispanic children. Funny or racist? The general consensus I've gotten so far has been funny. And if you're in the chat room at SHR Media, I'd like to see what you have to say. But it really gets you thinking, right? It really gets you thinking about how people have just gone crazy with political correctness. And how it is just so over the top at this point. It's almost unstomachable. Like I said, people were not angry at me, but more or less like, well, you should always be careful about how you say things. No, I didn't care. I didn't want my kid to fall 10 feet onto his face. Again.
No. They were angry at you, okay? Let's not sugarcoat this. They were angry at you, Sean. They weren't angry with you. They weren't angry for you. They weren't angry alongside of you. They were angry at you.
Well,
and the sooner you accept that, the sooner I think we can move on and put this whole horrible episode behind us.
One of the first people I notified, who is joining me now on the air, is, as always, is Sackhead Clint. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well. I was just sharing with our wonderful listeners the story I shared this morning at my son's school, and how I would say 85% of the people that I told, this was one of those things that I immediately thought about it, because on top of the children looking at me, there were also other adults looking at me, and immediate with judgment. So I said,
right.
A little social experiment. Let me start
more so than usual.
Yeah. Let me start kind of.
What you're hearing is Hardie Fiber Cement Siding living up to its reputation as the siding that helps resist weather damage, no matter what Mother Nature throws its way. James Hardie knows how important a reputation is, especially when you're a home builder. That's why Hardie products withstand the elements better than wood-based siding, with styles to match their strength. Because when home builders work with us, we deliver our best so they can look their best. Protect your reputation with exterior products by James Hardie.
Branching around and asking people and see what their reaction is. 85% roughly they found it hysterical. Absolutely just hysterical. And again, some of my funniest moments are when I'm trying not to be. But there was that 10 to 15%, Clint,
Wait.
who looked at me like I was barbecuing a kitten in front of them.
Did you properly glaze it? Did you use molasses?
Yeah. Barbecue his ass in molasses. So I brought it up for the listeners, and I want your reaction right now. Racist or funny?
Oh, funny.
Okay, good. So
yeah, hands down, funny. Because and here's why it's funny. Because for you, the blatant bigot, you actually were not being bigoted for once.
I was just being funny.
You were just being funny. Well, actually, you weren't. You were being serious,
right.
Which makes the comedy even that much better.
That, of course, I just can't help myself but get it out, right?
Right, you can't. You're such a bigot that you can't help for it but to come across racist. And so that 10 to 15%, clearly they were all of our listeners because they understand that you, in and of yourself, are just such a blatant racist that they were horrified when you said that. But to everybody else who doesn't know you and thinks that you're a tolerant individual, they thought it was hilarious.
It is hilarious. I don't care what anyone says. Oh, man. How are you, my friend?
Oh, so I'm good. Listen, you and I decided that I would go out on assignment, which I have done.
In paradise.
And my assignment, I was supposed to go attempt to locate Sacco in the cesspool that is known as San Francisco.
Right.
But the problem is I took a left turn, and I ended up spending the last couple days in the armpit of the state of California, Fresno.
Yes.
And I don't know how necessarily I got to Fresno. It's like a blur. I don't know if I made it to San Francisco and I got immediately recognized as a conservative, so they drugged me or put some kind of acid or something in my drink and then brought me to Fresno. I don't know. I think, like I said, maybe I turned left at some point and didn't realize it. But so here I sit in a hotel in Fresno, of all places, for this week.
Well, and immediately out of the chat room, somebody says, "Can you take a left turn from San Francisco?" I said, "You can take a more left turn in San Francisco, but you surely can't take a right turn in San Francisco."
No. Yeah, and I think that's why perhaps I ended up here, because I was attempting to fit in when I turned left, and it's such a difficult maneuver for me, both in reality and philosophically, that I ended up here. So I think this is God's way of telling me, don't ever turn to the left again. Yeah. Because, see, what San Francisco does, they do something very calculated. If you turn right in San Francisco, you end up in the middle of the frickin' ocean. So they definitely don't want anybody turning to the right.
Oh, yeah. Either way, it's definitely well worth. I'm glad that you're there and I'm not, my friend. That's really what I have to say.
Yeah, no, there's a great sport here that I've been playing called Throw the Rocks at the Hookers as they walk by the hotel.
And now explain the rules at this.
Sport. Yeah.
Explain the rules, please.
Okay, yeah. So if you see a hooker, you throw rocks at them.
Okay. Good.
It's good all-American. It's a good all-American clean fun. Now there is a point system. If you get like 3 points for the hooker that you don't think is on drugs, right? So there's no meth sores or they're not missing any teeth or whatever. Perhaps they're new to the industry.
Right.
And because they're kind of a unicorn in a lot of places, that's why they're worth so many points. 3. You get 1 point for the traditional crackhead, something of that nature that are out here doing their thing. So missing teeth, the nasty sores, all the stuff, before you get, it's only 1 point because those are a dime a dozen. I think that's on the price sheet when I checked into this hotel.
Right.
It's if you want a drug addicted hooker, it's a dime for literally a dozen of them.
Sackheads Radio, throwing rocks at hookers for freedom.
Right. So, and now if there's an undercover cop, that's 5 points.
Right.
And it's not like they're going to break their cover and be like, "Hey, you just threw a rock at me. You're under arrest." No, because then everybody would know everybody would know they're a cop anyway. I'm sorry. But if you're in the middle of Fresno and there's a smoking hot hooker on the corner who's willing to do things for like $10, it's probably a cop.
Right.
I'm just saying.
Well, it's one of those things, too, when you throw the rock and she walks away and then all of a sudden 20 cops show up and they start asking you why you're throwing rocks at people, that's a dead giveaway, too.
Right. Now here's the caveat. These are earth rocks. These are not rocks of cocaine.
Right.
Because now there is a sport that some people
that would cause a stampede
where they will throw rocks of cocaine at the hookers and they actually flock to you. So there is that.
That would cause a stampede of hookers in Fresno.
Oh, yeah.
Like, if you drove down
Yeah.
the street just dangling it on, like, a fishing line on Main Street in Fresno, you could actually almost, I'm looking at it almost like the Pied Piper, right? They would all follow you.
Right.
And actually, you know what? Just so I'm giving the police down there a little hint on maybe how to deal with their hooker problem. Just dangle a rock and drag it right down to Tijuana.
Yeah, or out into the middle of some field somewhere. Either way.
Whatever.
Now, here's the funny part. When I get pulled over because I'm getting profiled, like, you are way too clean cut to be here. Obviously, you're up to some shenaniganry.
Right.
That's a problem. I have been racially profiled in Fresno, and I had no idea that would be possible.
Well, just be careful down there. You know what the funny part is how many guys that are actually women did you stop thinking it was Sacco?
And that's the scary part, right? Because in San Francisco, they're all over the place because even the women are so hairy.
Right.
But
What you're hearing is Hardy Fiber Cement Siding living up to its reputation as the siding that helps resist weather damage, no matter what Mother Nature throws its way. James Hardy knows how important a reputation is, especially when you're a home builder. That's why Hardy products withstand the elements better than wood-based siding, with styles to match their strength. Because when home builders work with us, we deliver our best so they can look their best. Protect your reputation with exterior products by James Hardy.
Since I got outside of there and woke up, like today, it's just such another world that I haven't seen a Sacco at all. I mean, Sacco can look like a hairy hippie, particularly when his shirt is off, let's be real. But here in Fresno, it's very difficult for Sacco to look like a crack whore. So, yeah.
Well, I'm hoping...
Does that make sense at all?
Yeah, no, I completely understand where you're going with that. I hope you can make it through this show without having to dodge any sort of gunshots or anything.
Hang on. Here's one. Let me see if I get her. Yeah, she started running. Okay, so word must be out.
Well, it doesn't help. You know as well as I do, they don't like bright lights. So when you turn on the lights, they run. They scatter like roaches.
Right. It's not like a bug light where it attracts them in.
Right.
No. I look, Fresno, this place is, I hate Fresno. But I'm actually over by Fresno State University, which isn't bad. But I do still like making fun of this town.
Well, hopefully you make it out of there in one piece. Hey,
oh, I will. Yeah.
A lot to talk about this week. And we're going to kind of play roulette as far as how we're going to pick our topics. And you're up first.
Are we doing the wheel of roulette again?
No, and here is why.
The wheel of topics?
The wheel of topics. The big wheel of topics. You get the first spin, my friend.
Okay, well, you're going to have to do a virtual spin for me and then text me what the topic came up to be.
Okay.
And go.
U.S. sends a ship by...
Hang on. Just text me the topic, and I'll intro it.
I'm going to text it to you?
Yeah, you can text it to me, because otherwise it's not really me introducing the topic when it's my turn to spin the wheel. Come on, Sean, we've played this before. Okay, I got your message.
Okay.
So, first topic, apparently from the Great Big Wheel of Topics, is U.S. naval destroyer cruises within 12 miles of disputed islands in the sea, in the South China Sea.
Yeah, and China seems to be a little aggravated about this.
Fuck them. Next topic.
No, listen, we announced that we're going to be doing naval passes and aerial passes. I think the E-3 is what they said would be the most likely used aircraft to check out what's going on there.
Well, hang on a second. When you said aerial passes, I thought for a moment, because this is the Obama administration, and because the Obama administration and their defense policy really is a Mickey Mouse operation, I thought they were going to contract with Disney to actually have the mermaid go by the islands.
Hey, listen, anything's
come on,
possible,
that was brilliantly tied together.
I'm very impressed with your ability to tie that together. Oh, just over 24 hours ago, the U.S. Navy did, in fact, send one of its quote-unquote warships. I love how some news agencies call it, friendly news agencies call it naval ship. When you get the unfriendlies like CNN, Yahoo, all the other, they call them a warship. Just to make it sound that much more hateful, like what we're doing is, it's almost like the USS Lassen literally drove by, kind of like Yosemite Sam, just firing missiles into the air and screaming at the top of its lungs. When you look at some of these reports, it's absolutely ridiculous.
That they call a warship a warship?
Well, but you know as well as I do, they try to throw those little caveats in there to make it sound more horrible than it really was. It's a naval ship.
So it's a naval ship. Now, hang on a second. What sounds worse? They sent a warship or they sent a destroyer?
Ooh. I hope they sent a destroyer.
They did send a destroyer.
I know. No, what I meant, like an actual to destroy it. In this particular case,
well, they sent the destroyer, and I think it came so close, and the destroyer was like, "Yeah, we got this. Not even a competition," and so they just sailed away.
Well, China's angry.
Do you think they do jazzercise on naval vessels?
Yes.
I was just curious.
Chinese Foreign Minister Zhang Yusi told Max Baucus that the U.S. had acted...
Did you say dang Yusi?
Yes. Dang Yusi, yo! Told Max Baucus that the U.S. had acted in defiance of repeated Chinese objections and had threatened China's sovereignty and security. While offering no details, Zhang said Tuesday's provocative maneuver also placed personnel and infrastructure on the island.
Provocative maneuver?
In jeopardy.
What happened? Did the destroyer do a striptease on a stripper pole?
I was just going to say.
Provocative maneuver.
Okay, Seaman Junior Class, up the flagpole. Wait, what? Yeah, no, we have to do a provocative maneuver against this island. So we're going to play the Nay Nay and Whip song, and you get up there and scare the hell out of those Chinese. How is that?
But sir, can't we just play YMCA and I dance in skin-tight butt shorts like last time? I mean...
No, that's how you got to be second class from third class. Now, get up there and shake...
Oh, my God.
I love how they call it provocative. Listen, China, first of all, you knew this was coming. You can't just show up in an island that isn't claimed and or claimed by another country and say...
Or a few countries.
Or a few countries in this instant. It's almost like we're all fighting against... they're all fighting for the same girl, right? It's this little man-made island, and obviously it has a tactical advantage. But it's amazing to me what China will do in order to provoke us in the air. We've had several air incidents with China over the last couple of years, and that's okay. It was a complete misunderstanding. But this...
And we established that they can't fly.
Yeah. We did talk about that, didn't we?
Yes, we did. Yes, we did. Yeah, they weren't really unsafe maneuvers. They just fly like they drive, I think is what you said, but I don't remember.
So the Chinese foreign minister went on to say, hello, extremely dissatisfied and resolutely opposed to the... What? What?
Here's what I picture. Here's what I picture on those islands. Like the Philippines should show up too, right? And they're like, I came this planet in the name of the Earth. I came this planet in the name of Mars. Isn't that lovely?
Yes, isn't that lovely? I'm going to use my P-32 space modulator.
My disintegrating pistol.
Everything leads back to Bugs Bunny. The Chinese...
Dude, that is a universal truth.
We can figure it out quicker than Kevin Bacon.
That is sackhead truth number one. I think it's codified in our bylaws where we have truths, and sackhead truth number one is, in fact, that everything can be tied back to Looney Tunes.
Absolutely. China said it was extremely
I claim this island.
extremely dissatisfied and resolutely opposed to the U.S. actions. The ministry said the U.S. State Department declined to comment on Tuesday meeting and in the Tuesday meeting. State Department declined to comment. Essentially, maybe we did send a ship by, maybe we didn't send a ship by. That's not really for us to discuss, but here's some lovely up-close pictures of this island in the Chinese Sea.
and our ship mast in the foreground, but never mind that.
Right. Do you think this is going to increase actual tensions, or is this all like that island man-made tensions?
I honestly think this is a pissing contest at this point. I mean, obviously China wants that because there is some sort of strategic advantage to that point. I don't know how the hell they're going to settle this dispute because everybody claims this particular area of water. And I do like how the Obama administration raised a humongous middle finger by actually sailing the ship through there.
Well, and that's
and I do want to touch. I do want to touch on something else. I can't. We have 6 minutes till break. But I actually have, and here's where the entire chat room turns against me. Are you ready for it?
Oh,
watch it because I'm just on the phone. I have no research materials.
Dude, they are about to hit their cap locks and yell. Go ahead.
Oh yeah. No, they are. Get ready for it because I'm about to give Obama a little bit of kudos. This week he also came out and said that they want to reduce the number of hours that students are spending for standardized tests. Now, I'm not with him 100% because he doesn't want to do away with all of the federal standardized tests, but he did say that he's directing the Department of Education to look at ways to reduce the standardized testing that's done for students throughout the country. He's encouraging states to do the same as well, saying that our students are missing something because they're spending too much class time on preparing for standardized tests and not enough time actually learning like they should be learning, and the numbers were broken down. Now, again, he's not for doing away with all the federal standardized testing, and so I am against him on that. But the fact that this president has done something that even George W. Bush wouldn't do, in that he's not only ordering the federal Department of Education, which, let's face it, shouldn't exist anyways, but to reduce the standardized testing and times for the students, but also encouraging states to do the same. I actually have to give him a little bit of credit on that. I was happy to read that this president would consider that and now is looking to direct that again. Not entirely thrilled that he doesn't want to do away with it all, but the fact that this president actually took action and recognized that as an issue was kind of a big deal for me, particularly since I have school-aged little crumb crunchers running around.
Bullshit. Here's my theory on this. I think that it was getting out there very quickly that Common Core is such a disaster that there was going to be serious testing problems, so he's going to make a push to reduce testing so there's less failures. I also think he is softening up the anti-Common Core people a little bit. Hey, listen, I'm giving you a little bit. We're stepping back a little bit.
Yeah, I don't care.
I understand. I'm just telling you my belief for the political view of this, if you will. And
look, there's politics in every decision that's made, both in decisions we agree with and decisions we don't. Right?
I didn't think I was.
This
done.
is my segment. So
I didn't think I was done.
This is my segment.
Still didn't think I was done.
Listen. I have some Fresno ghetto going on right now. You got to understand. I've been immersed in this culture for a few days now. So you're going to have to cut me a little bit of slack because cutting goes a long way here in Fresno.
Right, I was going to say, that's a national pastime of Fresno. Agador also had another great point, though, is that there can be more lecture time in the classroom to speed up the indoctrination. Like I said,
exactly.
Anything to undo Common Core, I agree. I think it's a very good thing. I think taking the pressure off these kids, anything we can get to go back to how school used to be, that used to work, as much as up until the federal government decided to come in and try to play God with it. Our school systems worked really, really well, right? Reading, writing, arithmetic we did excellent at. It wasn't until the Fed stepped in, and people forget about this. When the Fed stepped in and the Department of Education started putting its greedy little mitts in every single schoolhouse in the country, did our numbers start falling off? Well, that and the destruction of the core family unit in this country. But those two things together, I don't know if we can fix the core family unit quick, but we could fix the Department of Education thing real fast. Nobody has the stones to do it.
No, you're right. And look, my only point with this is, like I was saying, and I do apologize for interrupting you. Not really, you little crybaby. But
I was going to say, since when?
Look, every decision that's made for a White House is done for political reasons. The fact, and I don't want to get into a position where I'm criticizing this president for not taking action in this area, and then when he does take action, I'm criticizing him for his motivations behind taking action. So, look, and we have talked about education before on our show, obviously. So the fact that this president did something, and whatever the motivation was, the fact is, even if he realized that Common Core is a disaster in this country, even if he did this to try and gain some kind of political vote with parents of the middle class because he realizes Common Core is so unpopular, the bottom line is he realized that the standardized test is a problem, whether it's because of political pressure from the electorate that he answers to. The fact is that he made a decision to take some kind of action. Now, maybe it doesn't go as far as I'd like or you'd like, but it's some action.
30 seconds.
And if it's in response to political pressure or if it's in response to a constituency that says, hey, we really don't like this, then that's his freaking job. And for once, maybe he listened to people, and so whether he's trying to soften it or whatever, the point is he took action. And so I do have to give a little bit of a head nod that direction to the man.
All right, you heard that here first, folks. Sackhead Clint gave the president a nose nod. That's one nose nod in the right direction.
And Sean gave him a belly bump. So
no, I'm not quite there yet. But you know me, I'm one of those criticizes. Hey, we got to take a break, folks. It's 8:30. When we come back, the second best newsman in the business, as I like to call him, the old number 2, Dan Butcher will join us from Pundit Press to discuss tonight's debates. All that and more here on the Sackheads Radio Show live on the SHR Media Network. I love being in charge of this microphone.
The best late-night conservative talk show in America. Sackheads Radio.
In a world controlled by corrupt politicians.
You got a business. You didn't build that.
A team of ordinary men emerge from the ashes to give voice to the voiceless and hope to the hopeless. Sackhead Sean.
Dude, I'm not saying calf for the stupid problem.
Sackhead Clint.
All good friends of ours usually show up drunk.
Also starring Sacco as the producer.
I'm a little bit drunk, 'cause I'm drinking.
They are the Sackheads Radio Show. Every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific on shrmedia.com.
This is Tammy Jackson, inviting you to join me on The Tammy Jackson Show every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Pacific on the 405radio.com. Put down that remote and tune into the show that covers politics, guns and the Second Amendment, religious liberties, sanctity of life, the military, and more. I host newsworthy guests and work hard to be a conservative radio show that's not like all the others. So save Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific for me, Tammy Jackson, on the 405media.com.
Who listens to the Andrea Kaye Show? Let's find out as we eavesdrop on listener Roger Johnson in Encinitas.
You know, if our policy is going to be bring any child who comes across the border to coordination, we have to take them in.
Okay, so apparently Roger fell asleep in the middle of my brilliant political tirade, and now he plans to sue me because I put him on the air, sleeping. Obviously, he's a liberal.
Snoring, not an option while listening to The Andrea Kaye Show, Tuesday mornings at 11 on Financial News and Talk.
You know I'm right. Y'all know I'm right.
Hello, I'm Matt, a student at Hillsdale College. Here's Hillsdale President Larry Arnn on the continuing relevance of the Constitution.
Many argue today that the Constitution is outdated because it addresses problems peculiar to the 18th century. Some parts of the Constitution do read rather quaintly. Consider the injunction against titles of nobility in Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution. But is that so outdated? The purpose of the injunction is to prevent the government granting special privileges to some for partisan reasons. This strikes at the heart of the rule of law. The crony capitalism so common today is a place where the government bestows favors and tax dollars on some businesses to give them a leg up over others. This is exactly the kind of thing the Constitution was meant to prohibit. The Constitution is not so outdated after all.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.com.
And welcome back to the Sackheads Radio Show live on the SHR Media Network. I'm in the main studio up here in beautiful downtown, and Clint is in Fresno on the phone, and also also joining us on the phone, a man who, before we get into the debates tonight, has an announcement regarding his show that he's bringing back, and we're excited to have it back. But the second best newsman of the business, the editor-in-chief at Pundit Press, and our dearest friend, making his first official Sackheads appearance, Dan the Man Butcher. Dan, sir, good evening.
Good evening, guys. Now, how in the hell am I supposed to follow up the throwing rocks at hookers segment? I mean, come on, guys.
Look, Dan, here's the thing.
I told you to get lubricated for the show.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, you have to find some drug dealer, pedophile, or something, and do some kind of Dexter stuff to be able to follow up with that.
That's the truth.
As Dan's driving through Texas, throwing bottles at drug dealers to try to balance out.
Yeah.
Dan Butcher is throwing bottles at pedophiles. The Catholic Church issues a statement.
Film at 11.
Hey guys, I think a bolt of lightning just singed my toe hair off. I'm sorry.
He never misses, so that was just a warning. Dan, thank you.
Yeah, I think it was.
Thank you for joining us. I know you're a little bit under the weather, and you're taking your medication, which we discussed earlier. I appreciate that. But your show's coming back, and tell us a little bit about that.
Well, we're going to bring the show back. We're going to air Monday through Friday. We're going to actually take the show. The show is going to air. We were originally going to go 5 to 6 Eastern time. We had a little snafu there, so we're moving it around a little bit. So I'll actually be going in the 7 to 8 Eastern time slot, Monday through Friday. Actually, it'll be Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, because of course our good friend Jersey Joe has his nighttime Reaver show that he does. So we won't be on Wednesday. Of course, a big part of the show, and it kind of. When we made the announcement yesterday on Facebook and Twitter, it kind of took a life of its own, and that is the fact that the very wonderful and beautiful Liz Loris will be joining me on the show. Liz will be on the show on Mondays and Fridays, doing a couple of segments. And then Liz will also be doing, we're kind of shooting at once a month, maybe every 6 weeks or so, but we'll actually turn the show completely over to her on Friday so that she can do some special reports. So I'm really looking forward to having Liz back on the air. I'm just along for the ride. It's going to be kind of like Beauty and the Beast in that.
Hey,
but,
you know what?
But we're very excited that Liz is coming back to the air too.
Are you Beauty or are you Beast?
Oh, I'm definitely the ugly one there. I make no buts about that, guys.
I will attest to that. Actually,
if you ask Caitlyn Jenner, I might be handsome, but anyway, that's a whole other subject.
Oh,
by the way, have you seen Caitlyn walking around in Fresno way out there throwing rocks?
I have no idea, actually. That's a great question.
Of course, you could probably catch any Kardashian out there walking around.
Yeah, but
anyway,
here's the problem,
the
Dan.
lawsuit is coming.
Dan, here's the problem. If he throws a rock at Caitlyn could actually run him down and do some damage.
That's probably true. Oh, man.
So, Dan, the debates tonight. Who are the winners, who are the losers, and what are the highlights? Let's get right to the meat and potatoes.
You know what? Let's get to the winners tonight. The winners tonight were definitely Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz. The rest of the field certainly did not help themselves. This was a debate that George Bush. Maybe I need to lay off my hot toddy here.
More.
Jeb Bush absolutely had to win tonight. He did not make an impact. Of course, Marco Rubio and Jeb Bush did have a little exchange, which we knew that was going to come. Jeb Bush attacked Marco Rubio's recent voting record in the Senate, which that is a legitimate thing to go after. So it was interesting to see that. But other than that, it was a pretty uneventful debate until about 30 minutes in. And that is when Ted Cruz absolutely obliterated the debate moderators. Now let me tell you some of the questions that were asked by John Harwood, Becky Quick, and Carl Quintanilla. Harwood's first question to Donald Trump was whether Trump felt like a comic book villain. Becky Quick asked Carly Fiorito why she was so bad at her job. Carl Quintanilla asked Marco Rubio why he hadn't resigned from the Senate already. And then Harwood came back and asked Ohio Governor John Kasich, who's, by the way, he's polling at 1% in the majority of the polls, to criticize every other candidate on the stage. And so that set up the confrontation that Cruz had. And he went full Newt Gingrich. It was actually nice to see. I've been on the campaign trail with Ted Cruz when he was running for the U.S. Senate and when he was running against David Dewhurst here in Texas. And so I have seen this fiery side of Ted Cruz. This is the fiery side that we have been waiting to see from him instead of the more rehearsed, refined, kind of sitting back version that he's done in the first two debates. But what he did is he particularly went after John Harwood of the New York Times, and he said the questions asked in this debate illustrate why American people don't trust the media. Everyone at home tonight knows that the moderators have no intention of voting in the Republican primary. And then, of course, Cruz went head-to-head with Harwood for cutting him off and wanting to move on. I want to make sure that I get this. Carl Quintanilla asked, Congressional Republicans, Democrats in the White House are about to strike a compromise that would raise the debt limit, prevent a government shutdown, and calm financial markets of fear that the Washington crisis is on its way. Does your opposition to it show that you're not the kind of problem solver that America voters want? Now, and then Cruz went on to say, let me say something at the outset. The question that's asked in this debate illustrates why the American people don't trust the media. And this is not a cage match. And you look at the questions, Donald Trump, are you a comic book villain? Ben Carson, can you do math? John Kasich, will you insult two people over here? Marco Rubio, why don't you resign? Jeb Bush, why have your numbers fallen? How about talking about the substantive issues? And, of course, Cruz got a big round of applause. Now, Quintanilla came back and kind of jumped at Cruz and said, well, do we get credit for this? And Cruz went on to say, and Carl, I'm not finished yet. The contrast with the Democratic debate where every thought and question from the media was, which of you is more handsome and why? And then he paused. Quintanilla went on to say, you have 30 seconds left to answer should you choose to do so. And Cruz said, let me be clear. The men and women on this stage have more ideas, more experience, more common sense than every participant in the Democratic debate. That debate reflected a debate between the Bolsheviks and the Mensheviks. nobody believes that the moderators have any intention of voting in a Republican primary. And so it got even better from this. Quentin Miller asked him, I've asked you about the debt limit and got no question. Cruz said, do you want an answer to that question? I'll be happy to answer that question. Then Harwood butted up and said, hey, we're moving on. And said, Senator Rand Paul, I have a question for you. Well, then Cruz just butted right in and said, so you don't actually want to hear the answer, John. You don't want to hear the answer. You just want to incite insult. And then Harwood said, you used your time on something else. Cruz scolded, you're not interested in an answer. And Harwood, trying his best to get out of being lambasted from Cruz, said, I'm interested in an answer from Senator Paul. That was the most exciting part of tonight's debate, that exchange. And I would suspect that, Ted Cruz, and I'll let you guys come back into this, but Ted Cruz, of all of the candidates, even though he's still polling right in the middle of the pack, he's been running the best campaign. He's the best funded campaign. At this point, he's running the smartest campaign. And tonight was the night that Cruz broke out and went on the attack. He didn't attack his fellow Republicans. He attacked the establishment media. We saw some shots also at the Republican establishment, but Cruz, above all, he went on the attack tonight, which is what a lot of his supporters and a lot of folks on the conservative movement have been waiting for. And let's face it, a lot of independents, a lot of the folks that have been supporting Donald Trump up to this point, this is what they've been waiting for Ted Cruz to do. So it's going to be interesting to see how big of a bump he gets in the polls after this.
Now, you also talked about when we were on break that Marco Rubio, you thought, had an excellent night as well. And the other players really didn't have much of an impact. Go ahead.
Oh, well, let me tell you what was the deal with Rubio. Rubio actually caught John Harwood in a lie, okay? And what was happening is Harwood was Rubio criticized Harwood, accusing him of getting facts wrong as the two squabbled over the senator's tax plan. And of course, John Harwood had actually wrote a story on Harwood, on Rubio's tax plan, that he had to go back and correct several times. Now, Harwood denied the accusation. But if you take a quick look, which I did, if you take a look at the New York Times archives, it shows a recent story by Harwood about taxes and Republicans, and the piece Rubio appears to be referring to in the New York Times, does have some corrections to the story. So it's very interesting that Harwood was caught trying to attack Rubio with a lie, and Rubio was actually very quick and came back and corrected the whole thing. So I think Rubio as well really stood out, and I've long held out that that Donald Trump has changed the entire dynamic of this race. He's making the Republicans have to stand on a lot of issues, answer a lot of questions. But in the end, I think it's going to be the likes of Rubio and Ted Cruz that are going to come to the forefront of this. Carson, who actually went into tonight's debate, depending on what polls you're looking at, as the front runner, he really collapsed tonight. He just did not. He was exposed on a lot of policy issues that he really is still questionable about, not very knowledgeable about, that he would have to be as president of the United States. So he was exposed in that, and usually when you see that happen, you'll see a candidate start to falter pretty quickly. So I still think that in the long run, Rubio and Cruz are going to jump to the forefront of this. Be interesting. I don't think Bush is completely out of it yet, but you know what? At this point, there's a possibility that Bush doesn't even make it to Iowa. So, so what's happening? But go ahead.
I was going to say, Carly Fiorina has had a couple of good debates. Both on the secondary stage at first and then on the primary stage last time. How did she perform tonight? Did she hurt herself? Did she help herself? Did she pretty much stay on par?
from what I've looked at and gone back and looked at some of the video that I've looked at, she did okay. She really didn't stand out like she did in the first two debates. The first debate she stood out and got herself up into the top tier debate. Tonight she really, she was Carly Fiorino, and she stuck to the issues that she does. But this format, and especially the way that the moderators, the types of questions that they were answering, really didn't give her the opportunity to stand out. Carly Fiorino, I still think I think she's more of a vice presidential contender versus a presidential contender at this point. But she certainly didn't hurt herself at all. Chris Christie, Chris Christie had some moments tonight. It was once again, there was one particular exchange, and I want to get to my notes here because I want to bring this up.
I'm sorry, did you say notes?
Yes, I actually jotted down a few notes.
Wow.
But this was the particular note that I wanted to jot down because I was talking with Sean about this before we came on the air, and I didn't want to forget about it. So it's actually on a napkin right here. I may have blew my nose with it, but I'm not sure. But CNBC actually brought up fantasy sports, and the gist of the question is, should fantasy sports, especially particularly focusing on fantasy sports betting, should that be outlawed? Jeb Bush, kind of threw it away, and Jeb Bush, what Jeb Bush tried to do, he tried to show that he was, he pulled a Hillary Clinton. He tried to show he was part of the common folk with this, and he was actually touting his success in fantasy sports, though he said that he does not gamble in fantasy sports. Now, Chris Christie actually seized on it, and he had the absolute perfect answer to another asinine, stupid-ass question from the debate moderators. And Chris Christie said, "Enough on fantasy football. Let's people play. Who cares?" So that kind of summed up the frustration that the candidates had tonight. And let me give you the numbers on how many the debate clock tonight. Rubio had 8 minutes and 44 seconds. Fiorino had 8 minutes and 37 seconds. Kasich, I don't know why Kasich had so much time. 8 minutes and 6 seconds. Trump, 7 minutes and 44 seconds. Cruz, 6:52. Christie, 6 minutes and 30 seconds. Huckabee, 5 minutes and 47 seconds. Carson, who's the front runner, he won't be after tonight, 5 minutes and 28 seconds. Rand Paul, 5 minutes and 3 seconds. And Jeb Bush had 4 minutes and 56 seconds of answer time in the debate tonight.
Wow. So how do you see the field shaping up from here then? If you think Carson is going to fall, and I would agree with that analysis if that performance was as being reported. Does Trump jump back to the lead? Do you think Cruz and Rubio gain some significant ground?
You know what?
Does anybody drop out of the race?
Yeah, I think at this point that all four of the candidates that were in the lower tier will drop out. You know what? Lindsey Graham, being Lindsey Graham, he is so stubborn. He might not jump out because Lindsey Graham is thinking, hey, you know what? If these other three guys drop out, I might actually get to the top tier debate. But wouldn't it be funny if that was to happen, that three of those bottom tier candidates were to drop out, and here's Lindsey Graham still in the bottom tier having to debate himself? That would be very interesting to see. But I think the four bottom candidates are done. Jeb Bush, it's been a big story. It started at the end of last week, coming into this week, that they are having to cut costs massively by over 40% straight across the board. They're cutting salaries. They're cutting back cost. So he's trying to save money. So there's a little bit of issue there. But definitely, I think the four bottom candidates, they're done. They have nothing to do in this. You would say that the other candidates are stubborn in staying in this. I think Kasich is done. Kasich needs to go away. He's polling at 1%, so he needs to go away. Chris Christie, you have to think that somewhere in here, Chris Christie is going to catch fire, I think, and I think Chris Christie is kind of a sleeper in this. So I would not count Chris Christie out yet. I personally think Jeb Bush is done. Jeb Bush is done just because of who his family is. So Jeb Bush is done, especially after tonight's performance. Carson, I think Carson is very well funded. He'll be able to hang out for a while, kind of like Santorum did in 2012. But bottom line is, I think it's still going to come down. I think Trump's going to go back to the lead, double digits. Then you're going to see a big jump for. And in some polls, I think Ted Cruz may go ahead of Trump, and I think Rubio come in third, followed by Fiorino. I think that's how it's kind of starting to shape out, and then it'll go down to the bottoms. But I still think that somewhere in here, because Chris Christie is having his moments in some of these debates, and he's starting to get a little bit more time. And especially look at this, guys, the establishment GOP, as Jeb Bush starts to falter, they're going to be looking for a replacement, and so look for some of the establishment GOP donors with Jeb Bush faltering so bad. Look for them to get behind Chris Christie.
That's
you think
scary.
Anyone get behind Lindsey Graham?
You know what? Here's the thing with Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham, when he gets up, every answer he gives is, "When I am president." Lindsey Graham, all he talks about if you looked at the debate, the lower tier debate tonight, all he talked about whenever he was asked a question, he brought everything back to national defense. That is his forte, is national defense. That he is centering his entire campaign around his experience with national defense. So, but when he gets cornered on questions about dealing with the economy, dealing with Common Core educational needs, dealing with crime, etc., he falters big time. And so, look for in the debates coming up, if somehow Lindsey Graham actually does move up to the top tier debates, look for the moderators to go after him and try to keep the focus away from the national defense questions and foreign policy questions, and go after him on domestic issues where he is very, very weak. Lindsey Graham is very, very weak dealing with domestic policy, and you will definitely see Ted Cruz and Donald Trump especially will go in on that. So I still think Lindsey Graham is a non-factor.
I do think Lindsey Graham did have one of the better attacks on the Democrats tonight when he was discussing Bernie Sanders. He essentially said, it seems like the guy went to the Soviet Union on vacation one year and decided to never come back. I think that was probably one of his most shining moments. Who was just one little slam at Lindsey. As we move forward, we all have kind of forgot about Christie in a way that when we're discussing it, we discuss a bunch of other people. Obviously, Jeb Bush for who he is and just his name on top of what he is. But really, Chris Christie kind of ducked under the radar for like the last month or so.
Right.
Did that help to hurt?
It helped him. It's helping. Let's face it. I think it's actually for the last couple of weeks. All of the focus is actually it's like the liberal media all of a sudden is trying to coordinate Ben Carson to run against Hillary, because Hillary does not poll very well against Trump, against Ted Cruz, against Rubio, etc. So they were really, especially dealing with Carson's stance on religious issues, on abortion, etc. They were really focusing on that. And so Donald Trump, let's face it, Donald Trump for the last, he kind of, he had a couple of moments during the last couple of weeks where he had some stuff, but Donald Trump even kind of flew under the radar into the night. Definitely Fiorino had completely disappeared from the media spotlight from tonight. So I definitely think that Ted Cruz has benefited from kind of flying under the radar. Chris Christie, let's face it, he has benefited from this because they haven't been focusing on him. If you look at back in New Jersey, there's a lot of focus on his that you don't hear about in the a lot in the national media, but we've covered it on Pundit Press a lot, having to do with all of his expenditures traveling around as a candidate, all of the expenses that the state of New Jersey is paying for his security detail that travels around with him while he's running for president. A lot of that stuff that he could be attacked for has not been reported on. Now that he's starting to come back into the spotlight a little bit, he's going to have to answer for some of that stuff. But I think the candidates that don't get a lot of focus on them tend to come back and be real strong in the polls after the debate, and that's why I still think you're going to see Trump go back to the top. Carson is going to drop. Bush won't change any. Once again, Cruz and Marco Rubio should make substantial gains as well. It'll be interesting to see where Carly Fiorino comes into all of this because she does have a very good campaign. She is having to answer for some of her business practices at Hewlett-Packard and the company she ran before, but I think she's handled that very well. She's handled it with grace. She's put the facts out there and said this is what happened. So she's handled those questions very well. And I think we could see, especially with all of the Democratic candidates dropping like flies right now, you could see, and Hillary Clinton, I mean, let's face it, the coronation has begun for Hillary Clinton, and especially after her marathon, the marathon Benghazi testimony that she gave, 11 hours worth of testimony. There were winners and losers in that, but you know what? Hillary Clinton showed something that she's been criticized about. A lot of people have talked about her age. Her age is very similar to when Ronald Reagan ran for president the first time. And so, but she showed a lot of stamina, a lot of strength. She showed that she was a very, very, very formidable opponent, not to be taken lightly. And the same applies to Carly Fiorino. So you might see some of the Republicans start to get behind her a little bit, especially when we start narrowing the field out and we start kind of to gauge for vice presidential candidates and stuff like that.
Well, Hillary's a whole other 30 minutes that we could do after the break that's coming up right here. I would like to talk, if both of you gentlemen are agreeable, I'd like to talk about Paul Ryan as the speaker after the break. Dan, can you stick around a few?
I sure can.
Awesome. We'll be back with Dan Butcher, the editor-in-chief of Pundit Press, and, of course, Sackhead Clint, throwing rocks at hookers in Fresno as he does best, right here on the Sackheads Radio Show, live on the SHR Media Network.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
In a world controlled by corrupt politicians,
You got a business. You didn't build that.
a team of ordinary men emerge from the ashes to give voice to the voiceless and hope to the hopeless. Sackhead Sean.
Dude, I'm not saying cough for the stupid pro.
Sackhead Clint.
all good friends of ours usually show up drunk.
Also starring Sacco as the producer.
I'm a little bit drunk, 'cause I'm drinking.
They are the Sackheads Radio Show. Every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific on shrmedia.com.
This is Tammy Jackson, inviting you to join me on The Tammy Jackson Show every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Pacific on the 405radio.com. Put down that remote and tune into the show that covers politics, guns and the Second Amendment, religious liberties, sanctity of life, the military, and more. I host newsworthy guests and work hard to be a conservative radio show that's not like all the others. So save Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific for me, Tammy Jackson, on the 405media.com.
Who listens to the Andrea Kaye Show? Let's find out as we eavesdrop on listener Roger Johnson in Encinitas.
You know, if our policy is going to be bring any child who comes across the border to coordination, we have to take them in.
Okay, so apparently Roger fell asleep in the middle of my brilliant political tirade, and now he plans to sue me because I put him on the air, sleeping. Obviously, he's a liberal.
Snoring, not an option while listening to The Andrea Kaye Show, Tuesday mornings at 11 on Financial News and Talk.
You know I'm right. Y'all know I'm right.
Hello, I'm Matt, a student at Hillsdale College. Here is Hillsdale President Larry Arnn on the continuing relevance of the Constitution.
Many argue today that the Constitution is outdated because it addresses problems peculiar to the 18th century. Some parts of the Constitution do read rather quaintly. Consider the injunction against titles of nobility in Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution. But is that so outdated? The purpose of the injunction is to prevent the government granting special privileges to some for partisan reasons. This strikes at the heart of the rule of law. The crony capitalism so common today is a place where the government bestows favors and tax dollars on some businesses to give them a leg up over others. This is exactly the kind of thing the Constitution was meant to prohibit. The Constitution is not so outdated after all.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.com.
And we're back on the Sackheads Radio Show live on the SHR Media Network. On the phone right now, Sackhead Clint, the Rock Chucka, and the second best newsman in the business, Dan the Man Butcher. Gentlemen, earlier this week, barring some sort of major everything, it looks like Paul Ryan's going to be the next Speaker of the House. Clint, you've been a Ryan supporter in this and how he went about this. What's your take on this?
Look, my position on it really hasn't changed. I think that I know that there is some issues some of the conservatives have in terms of his backing for the bailouts of the financial institutions and so forth. But I think that he is far more conservative than Boehner was. I think that his first, like I said last week, his first act of uniting the Republicans in the House by basically saying, hey, listen, I really don't want to do it. And I think, like I said last week as well, that has to do with his aspirations for higher office at some point. Typically, former speakers of the House do not do well when they run for president. But the fact that he said, I'll do it, but only if I have the backing of all the different groups on the Republican side, really kind of forced the Republicans to come together for something, finally, be it to back him, but still forced them to come together and really showed leadership. Like I said, initially when I first heard him, do that and say that, I was a little taken aback. I wasn't pleased. I thought it was more pompous and arrogant of him. But as I thought about it more, I think that it was really a brilliant stroke of leadership. I think that he's conservative on most things. We went through his past voting record and so forth, and his views on some of the issues before. And I know, Sean, you have issue with his immigration stance change from anti-amnesty to where that's something he's talked about recently. So again, I know there's no perfect candidate, but I think in terms of where the Republicans are now in the House, I think he's the perfect one to kind of bring everybody together. And look, they just passed this bill to fund the government through 2017 or whatever, and once again spending's increased. And this is something that Boner himself brokered with the Democrats. It was a bipartisan bill, and so now we have increased spending yet again. I'm not saying that I guarantee that won't happen under Ryan, but I think he will certainly be more of a hawk and push a more conservative agenda and open the process up more. So again, I like it. I think that he's the right person for the job now, for the state that the Republican Party is in the House, the state that they're at now. I think that he's the right person to kind of bring them along and get them back together again. Is he the perfect one? No, but I don't think that we can get somebody who's perfect for our fairly conservative views on everything right now, because the establishment wouldn't back that, and I think we'd still have more separation in the House.
Dan?
Where to start? Well, let's face it. Paul Ryan is a 100% improvement over John Boehner. I feel a lot more comfortable with Paul Ryan being third in line for the presidency than I ever did with John Boehner. Can you imagine John Boehner if somehow he would have had to become and assume the role as president of the United States, trying to take on Vladimir Putin? Barack Obama is Putin's bitch, but you're talking about John Boehner, who would be crying all the time.
And the budget for our spray tans would go through the roof.
Exactly. So it's 100% improvement. I do think that Paul Ryan has shown in the past he has been able to work with both sides. All the fractions of the Republican Party, whether it's conservatives, whether it's moderates, whether it's the libertarians, whether it's the gay activist in the Republican Party, what have you. Paul Ryan has been able to work with all sides. There still is a lot of questions concerning conservatives supporting Paul Ryan. Of course, specifically zeroing in on the budget deal that was reached between Boehner, the Democrats, and President Obama. Of course, Ryan is in full support of this. North Carolina Representative Mark Meadows, who's a Freedom Caucus leader, has called on all the speaker candidates, including Paul Ryan, to oppose the deal. So it's going to be very interesting to see how some of the conservatives react to Paul Ryan. In the long run, it's going to be a vast improvement. I don't think Paul Ryan can work with the Democrats as well. So I think we're going to start to see some movement taking place. Let's face it, Paul Ryan is just kind of holding the mantle right now, or holding the gavel, so to speak, until we see what happens after the 2016 elections. Because it's no guarantee that the Republicans are going to gain the White House. I think it's a pretty far-gone conclusion that they will hold on to the House, but there is a big possibility with over 20 Republicans having to defend their seats in 2016 that the Republicans could lose the U.S. Senate. So that comes into play as well. How will Paul Ryan not only work with the Republicans and Democrats in the House, how will he work with a potential president, with Democrat or Republican, but how will he work with the U.S. Senate if it goes back to being in Democrat hands? So there's a lot of stuff that comes into play here. There's no doubt that Paul Ryan, when it comes to budget issues, he is a hawk. He does know what he's talking about a lot of times. There's some issues on if he is supporting amnesty or not. That could come into play later on when we're having to, because we are going to have to deal and address immigration reform at some point. So that's going to come into play as well in all of this. So he's really taken on a hot seat. It's going to be interesting if he's up for it. It'll be interesting to see how long he actually sticks around in the speaker's seat after 2016. That has a lot to do with it. I think he has the potential to be a good Speaker of the House, but he also has the potential to be another John Boehner. Heaven forbid. So let's see what happens, guys.
Well, and one of the things, too, is I want to see, now that it's a done deal, I want to see how he approaches the president on just about anything.
Right.
I want to see if he's going to actually stand up a little bit, see the mistakes that Boehner's made, and if he wants to maintain that position and use that to kind of catapult him in the future, take that hard stance against the president on everything he can, that he should. Not just because, as we talked about earlier in the show, but everything that needs to be taken a stance on. I want to see how he approaches changing Obamacare. Odds of it being changed are slim to none, but that doesn't mean that I want to see his approach on it. And honestly, we're starting to see the IRS, which I want to talk about Koskinen here shortly, but just issues like that. Let's see, he's not my number one choice, but it's there. And I want to see what he's going to do and if he will do it. I want to see if he can unite the Republicans in the House and actually get something done. Clint?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I figured you had something to mumble through this.
No, look, I actually think he's going to get some things done. I really do, for the reasons I talked about before. I think this is a good thing. Of course, the Democrats put forth Nancy Pelosi again. No big surprise there. But I think that Paul Ryan, absent some major meltdown, is going to be the next Speaker of the House. I understand the concerns, and yes, I know that he's supporting this deal for now. I don't think that if he were the Speaker, he would have necessarily brokered this deal. I could be wrong, but I don't think that he would have brokered this deal the same way Boehner did. But I'm very interested to see where this goes. I'm very, very interested to see what his first move as Speaker is going to be.
Well, only time will tell, and very, very shortly here will it start telling. Staying in the House, but moving on. Koskinen, movement to impeach. Lois Lerner gets absolutely nothing. Clint, I'll give you the first word here.
Yeah, Koskinen is an appointed official. The House has not exercised impeachment powers in what I believe over 100 years on an official that is an appointed position. The Justice Department is not going to be filing any charges against Lois Lerner. Big shock there. We called that one a long time ago. She's not an appointed official. She's no longer an employee, so impeachment I don't think would apply in that case. So the fact that they're going after him for lying, for withholding information, for noncompliance with subpoenas under the high crimes and misdemeanors clause, I think is the right move in this case, particularly when he came in front of Congress and, in my opinion, misled and stonewalled and I think provided a testimony that was less than accurate. I don't think that I hope the House moves forward with impeachment against him. I think that if it gets tried in the Senate, I would hope that the Senate hears and handles the hearings honestly and openly, and that the senators vote the facts. I don't have faith that they would do that, so I don't know that there would necessarily be a conviction, but I would hope that they listen to the facts and try it fairly, and if so, they would vote accordingly, and if that's done, then I think that we would see a conviction in his removal from office. I don't have much faith that that would actually happen, but I think it would be important to send a message if impeachment proceedings were in fact brought forward, particularly since the Justice Department wouldn't do their job. And kind of a side thought I had while I was kind of hashing this out in my mind this week when I first read the story, and I think I sent it to you, Sean, when it first broke, was, is it possible, and I don't know the answer to this, since the House voted to hold Eric Holder in contempt and he declined to prosecute himself, what if a new Attorney General was appointed? Let's say the Republicans did take office. Would that new Attorney General be able to move forward with that case? And that's just kind of an aside thought that I had.
Well, that would
I know
be,
in that case, then you would have. Go ahead.
Well, obviously, I don't know what the exact statutes and limitations are on that, and that's something to look into. And Dan, I'm going to let you jump here in a second. My biggest thing, if the House moves forward with impeachment and the Senate tries it, you may see some...
It would have to.
Well, what I mean is when it gets to trial, you may see some Democratic senators jump on board to kind of shrug off that whole everything's partisan. And even if they're not 100% on board with really wanting to do the conviction, you may get some people protecting their own political skins and careers that might actually do the right thing, albeit not for the right reason.
Yeah, but there's also, on the Republican side, you got people like John McCain, who I believe he voted not guilty for Bill Clinton when the evidence was there.
Right, but this was...
like I said, I don't know that I have a whole lot of faith.
It'll be interesting to see. Dan, your thoughts, and not just about hot toddies.
Well, let me tell you, there's a lot of different dynamics at play here. I'm just going to be front and center on this. I think the impeachment proceedings will go absolutely nowhere, and here's why. The Republicans have so many issues that they have to deal with in their own caucus to begin with. And they don't. You're going to see party leadership kind of shy away from doing anything that's going to jeopardize any chances that they have of capturing the White House as well as holding on to the Senate. So that's a lot to come in. You also have to remember that House Majority Leader, there's no guarantee that House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy is going to be around. Especially how quickly he dropped out of the Speaker's race. He was the anointed one to take over as Speaker. So there's a lot of turmoil there fixing to happen within the House Republicans that's going to happen. So it'd be interesting to see how a lot of this plays out. I think the more likely scenario that is going to happen is you're going to see the Democrats see if this issue starts to gain actually any traction at all. Obviously, it's gaining a lot of traction from those of us in the conservative media. It's going to be interesting to see if it gains any traction whatsoever in the liberal media, in the networks, ABC, NBC, CNN, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If it gains any traction, if it does gain some traction there, and it starts to become a liability, and the Republicans, and if the Republicans actually have enough courage to proceed with impeachment, I think you will see the IRS commissioner resign. You will see President Obama actually ask for his resignation versus giving the Republicans any opportunity whatsoever. I mean, let's face it, the Republicans are using this impeachment procedure as an opportunity to kind of open this back up again and put some more light on it. And that is the last thing that the Democrats, the last thing Hillary Clinton wants to see happen. They don't want this to be in the spotlight again. So I think if you see them move ahead, if they actually are brave enough to move ahead with the proceedings, or if this starts to become a thorn in the side of President Obama's legacy or a thorn in the side of Hillary Clinton's campaign, you're going to see the IRS commissioner resign. Obama will not hesitate to ask for his resignation versus giving the Republicans the opportunity to basically try all of this again in the media in front of everybody, because they would be dragging Lois Lerner back in to testify, everybody that they have before, and so I don't think the Democrats are going to allow that to happen. They don't want that to happen. They don't want this in the spotlight again, because it could jeopardize their chances of regaining the Senate, and it would certainly jeopardize their chances of keeping control of the White House.
Well, and too, I think the Republicans would be more hungry to act with an election coming up here shortly, and there's, like you said, Democrats in general don't want it, especially Elijah Cummings, because I don't think he wants to discuss where those email trails are going to and from.
No, Cummings has his own problems. Cummings is also looking at 10 years in jail himself
exactly.
for a lot of the shenanigans he's pulling. So once again, a lot of these Democratic leaders don't want the spotlight on themselves because they know that they can also face some type of removal from Congress and prosecution as well.
Well, and the other thing,
I think there's another facet. I think there's another facet to this also, and that is, do the American people want to see Congress dealing with impeachment proceedings when there is so much other work to do? And so I think that the Republicans are going to be watching very closely any kind of polling and certainly public opinion on this issue, particularly going into an election year.
But Clint, I think there are members of the citizenry here just to see them do something finally with something that's in front of them, that there's so much evidence to move on that they've done nothing with in other cases. Maybe
I think there certainly is a segment of the population that wants to see that.
Yeah.
I don't know that that's a majority of the people. I think that a lot of people are going to think that, why are we spending time on this when there's so many other things out there that are affecting us that Congress could be acting on?
Well, you know what, guys?
I'm not saying I agree with that view. But I'm saying that is something that I think that is out there.
Well, guys, let's just break it down by the segment of who would want to see this and who wouldn't want to see this. If you look on the left side of the issue, the liberals / Democrats / progressives / socialists / communists, they want nothing to do with this. They want this to go away. They don't want to see it. And then if you look on the Republican side, the conservatives would love for this to be brought back to the forefront. But the establishment Republicans do not have the guts to go forward with this. And so it all comes back to it's going to come back to leadership in the House. And, definitely if Kevin McCarthy hangs around as House Majority Leader, it will go nowhere. And I think that's going to play a big part on how Paul Ryan reacts to all of this and allowing it to go anywhere. I think if McCarthy doesn't let it go anywhere, I don't think Paul Ryan lets it go anywhere either. But I still come back to the same scenario. There are a lot of people that would love to see Lois Lerner get what's coming to her. They want to see her go to jail. They want to see the IRS commissioner go to jail. They want to see somebody go to jail from this administration, whether it's Hillary, Obama.
I want to see somebody go to jail. I want to see that.
Exactly, but the Democrats have been very. Let's face it, guys. The Democrats have been very, very good. Especially the Clinton people have been very good with how they have handled Benghazi, how they've handled the IRS thing, getting their message out to counter, the facts that we present in the conservative media. They've done very well in doing that. They have done the exact same thing with the IRS scandal, and that's why you have not seen any charges brought forward. Now, I personally believe that the man sitting in the Oval Office had a lot to do with that, and I also think he would have a lot to do with shutting down any possible impeachment hearings to let this thing come back to the forefront. President Obama would shut this down before it ever got going with the resignation of the IRS commissioner and whoever else he thinks he needs to get some resignations from.
Clint?
No, look, I agree with that assessment. I actually think the Democrats would be foolish if they did not force his resignation or ask for his resignation. I think they'd be foolish to allow this to go forward, but I go back to the American public. I think, the conservatives and those on the right who are paying attention certainly want to see this go forward, and I'm not talking about members of Congress, I'm talking about members of the public. I think those on the left who are paying attention to this stuff certainly don't want it to go forward. I think there's a big segment in the American population to where this is old news. They may or may not know what's going on with it currently, and because it's not in the forefront of their mind anymore, it was kind of like a flash in the pan to a good segment of the population. I think that they are going to be the ones asking the question, and they're a big voting bloc in terms of who you have to win over going into an election year of why are we spending our time on this when there is this, and this that we need to focus on as a country.
I agree. At the end of the day, I think one of the things that this country is starved for is to see Congress actually do something, anything, something right. I think the American people are just, there's a reason they have, a 9% approval rating or something ridiculous. I agree with Dan. I think McCarthy's going to go down quicker than some of the women that Clinton's throwing rocks at tonight. I don't see him long term, and I think he actually kind of probably screwed himself out of his re-election as well. So there's a lot of things to consider. Obviously, a new speaker may change the entire perspective. And listen, you may see Paul Ryan run out there and try to lay down the law early, right? And he knows he's only a short timer, and he needs to kind of set as much emphasis as he can on where he wants to get things done. He may get out there and try to make an example out of Koskinen.
Well, here's the thing, Sean. Paul Ryan has already been laying the law down behind the scenes with all of his meetings. He would not have agreed to run for Speaker of the House unless he was very, very open about this. There were certain requirements that had to be made for him to assume the speakership role. And so we have not seen all of those behind-the-scene deals come out in public yet. Whether it was with the Freedom Caucus, whether it was with the establishment Republicans, with the Democrats, etc., we're going to start to see that stuff come to the forefront after the vote. Once again, it's we're all sitting here hoping, especially those of us that are on the more conservative side of the issues. We want to see Paul Ryan stand up and shout from the rooftops about the evils of socialism, progressivism, about the evils of the Obama administration. We want to see him make sure somebody goes to jail. We want to see. There's a lot of people out here that would love to see the Republicans do to the Democrats what the Democrats did to the Republicans with Richard Nixon and the Watergate issue.
Yep.
But unfortunately, we don't have in the liberal media or in the major networks and in the major newspapers in this country anymore. We don't have a Carl Bernstein or the likes of those type of folks that went out and did the footwork to bring all of this to the forefront. Guys, we can do everything we can and investigate all we can in the conservative media and preach from the rooftops and put all that information out there. But it would literally take all of the media, conservative, liberal, the networks, the newspapers, etc. It would take all of the media getting on board with this to bring down President Obama for anything that he had to do with Benghazi. I still think there is an opportunity to bring down Hillary Clinton. I think there's a bigger opportunity to bring down Hillary Clinton with the email situation than it is with Benghazi. I would love to see her pay for Benghazi because there's dead Americans there. An ambassador died senselessly. They didn't need to die. I would love to see her answer for that. But in the long run, I think that one smoking gun is still going to be the email issues and whether or not she openly exposed classified information or not in those emails. So that's the one thing that could send her to jail. But the Clintons, their entire history, going back to Little Rock, have done very well covering up their tracks. But, somewhere in the line, guys, we're going to have to find an ally because, once again, here we are in the conservative media. Unfortunately, my own website, I have 7 million readers a month. And we have a large listenership on the networks and stuff. But we still have to find a partner on the left, on the liberal side, that is willing to stand up and say, you know what, enough is enough with this, and until we do, we're just preaching to the choir, and a lot of this stuff we're not going to see anything happen.
Maybe Chris Matthews will want to sign a peace accord with us and join us.
he'd get a tingle up his leg for the sackheads, you know.
Either that or a taser in the back. I don't know which one it's going to be. Hey, we're up against a break. I want to discuss some of the goings-on with Russia the last few minutes after the break, if you can both stick around right here on the Sackheads Radio Show, live on the SHR Media Network.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
In a world controlled by corrupt politicians,
You got a business. That you didn't build that.
a team of ordinary men emerge from the ashes to give voice to the voiceless and hope to the hopeless. Sackhead Sean.
Dude, I'm not saying half of the stupid promo.
Sackhead Clint.
All good friends of ours usually show up drunk.
Also starring Sacco as the producer.
I'm a little bit drunk, cause I'm drinking.
They are the Sackheads Radio Show. Every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific on shrmedia.com.
This is Tammy Jackson, inviting you to join me on the Tammy Jackson Show every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Pacific on the 405radio.com. Put down that remote and tune into the show that covers politics, guns and the Second Amendment, religious liberties, sanctity of life, the military, and more. I host newsworthy guests and work hard to be a conservative radio show that's not like all the others. So save Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific for me, Tammy Jackson, on the 405media.com.
Who listens to the Andrea Kaye Show? Let's find out as we eavesdrop on listener Roger Johnson in Encinitas.
You know, if our policy is going to be bring any child who comes across the border to coordination, we have to take them in.
Okay, so apparently Roger fell asleep in the middle of my brilliant political tirade, and now he plans to sue me because I put him on the air, sleeping. Obviously, he's a liberal.
Snoring, not an option while listening to the Andrea Kaye Show, Tuesday mornings at 11 on Financial News and Talk.
You know I'm right. Y'all know I'm right.
Hello, I'm Matt, a student at Hillsdale College. Here is Hillsdale President Larry Arnn on the continuing relevance of the Constitution.
Many argue today that the Constitution is outdated because it addresses problems peculiar to the 18th century. Some parts of the Constitution do read rather quaintly. Consider the injunction against titles of nobility in Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution. But is that so outdated? The purpose of the injunction is to prevent the government granting special privileges to some for partisan reasons. This strikes at the heart of the rule of law. The crony capitalism so common today is a place where the government bestows favors and tax dollars on some businesses to give them a leg up over others. This is exactly the kind of thing the Constitution was meant to prohibit. The Constitution is not so outdated after all.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.com.
And welcome back to the Sackheads Radio Show live on the SHR Media Network. We are moving into the last 30 minutes. Before the end of the show, I do have some exciting news and to talk about for something coming up Saturday here on SHR Media, so stick around for that. Also, I want to give a huge shout-out to the Unpleasant Blind Guy. Pick him up here on SHR Media and our Spreaker page. It is definitely worth the listen. He is absolutely awesome. So, one of the sources that came out today is Russia is allegedly flying Iranian weapon shipments into Syria. When we talk about the unholy alliances that are out there, and now it's not just them in Syria together as maybe unwanted allies, if you will. They're now flying Russia's flying into Iran, picking up its weapons and delivering them to Syria. Clint, your response?
Yeah, I'm not shocked. Look, we know the circle of jerks have been in collusion and cooperation over in Syria. I mean, is anybody really surprised that Russia is flying Iranian weapons out of Iran into Syria? I mean, seriously.
Well,
is anybody really shocked at this?
Well, and here's one of the things that I immediately thought of. Is it that Russia doesn't have the armament to keep going? Are they just so far behind armament-wise? Or is Iran taking a much more increased role into this that we previously thought? Listen, they've lost a couple generals who are allegedly advisors, but now we know the Cubans are on the ground, we know the Russians are on the ground. Are we going to see an expanded Iranian military force on the ground in Syria? And if so, how does that change the conflict a little bit?
Well, I don't know that it necessarily does. I mean, we'll see continued buildups. They were already all over there in cooperation. Look, this is nothing that surprised me. I wasn't shocked. Like, oh my gosh, this is ridiculous. It was like, okay, yeah, I expected it.
Dan?
Where to go with this one? You know what? You are seeing what Vladimir Putin had in store all along, with Barack Obama withdrawing the United States from its leadership role in the world, from its leadership role in the Middle East. So Vladimir Putin has stepped up, and he is filling that void, and he is making his allies. He is obviously, the Iranians and Russians have long been allies, have long had weapons agreements. It's no surprise. The Iranians, while they were working out this nuclear deal with the Obama administration, were violating the nuclear deal. On the very day that the nuclear deal, quote unquote, went into effect, the Iranians were violating the deal with weapon shipments. All of the money that the United States is turning over to the Iranians, they are using to fund terrorism. So the Obama administration, by facto, has become a funder of terrorism with our taxpayer dollars, guys. And so this is something that we, once again, I know you guys have been talking about this. I have been writing about this since 2008. When this guy was elected president, and continue to write about it to this day, his foreign policy failure, the lack thereof, his foreign policy of appeasement, of singing Kumbaya, etc. But it's not surprising that now you're starting to see the likes of the Iranians and the Russians, who've kind of had a closeted relationship, if you want to call it that, bringing that relationship to the forefront, because let's face it, guys, when it comes to Middle Eastern policy now, in the situation in the Middle East, the Russians and the Iranians are going to start dictating what is happening there, and how they're going, how what's being done to deal with ISIS and the terrorist groups. It's also going to have, and one thing that we have to remember here is, guys, this is a very, very, very dangerous time for the Israelis now. The Israelis, the Obama administration, no friend to the Israelis whatsoever. I do not think if the Russians or the Iranians were to attack the Israel, I do not think that President Obama, at this point in time, I do not think that he would go to the defense of Israel. I think he would just sit back and find a way to blame it on the settlements, to blame it on Israel, to blame it on Benjamin Netanyahu. So that's the one thing that we have to remember here, is that the one country that's supposed to be our classic ally, that's supposed to be a democracy in that area that is controlled by tribal policies, controlled by terrorists, controlled by monarchies, controlled by a very radical and dangerous religion. I think the big story here is how Obama has completely abandoned Israel in the Middle East, completely abandoned everything that we fought for, completely gone against everything that we fought for, all the progress we made. We have lost all of that now, And now Vladimir Putin is looking to expand his sphere of influence, to return to the glory days of the Soviet Union, and the Iranians are going to be a major part of that, guys.
Well,
yeah, and
go ahead, Clint.
I don't think I think I think that Obama would do something pretty predictable if Iran did in fact end up in conflict with Israel. I don't think the Russians themselves would put boots on the ground in Israel. I just don't think Putin would go there. I think they would provide other support to the Iranians for sure because they're allies. I don't think Obama would step in on behalf of Israel, but I do think that he would flick the booger to the UN. I think that he would go to the UN. Everybody knows that the UN certainly is no friend of Israel's, so there's not a lot that would be done. Obama would come out and say, well, listen, we went to our friends in the U.S., tried to put together an international blah, 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 and just kind of stall in the UN and go from there and not really commit anything. That's how I think Obama would handle an Iranian conflict with Israel. I'd be curious to see what Great Britain would do if that happened, and if that would force Obama, if England if Great Britain did lend assistance to Israel, if that would kind of force the force the United States into something. But I don't think Obama would commit troops, particularly not right away. I think he'd attempt to go to the UN first, which seems to be kind of his go-to play.
Well, and my other question, Dave brought up in the chat room that the Israelis are actually starting to have conversations with China for support. But
right.
Do we see China show up at some point, even if it's military support versus actual boots on the ground in Syria?
China's already in the Middle East. They have a vested interest as far as oil in the Middle East. They have to. There's going to be a major agreement. China has to have oil to keep its economic engine humming along, and so you're going to see some major agreements between Russia, Iran. China will be a major player in that as well, as far as oil assets.
And Israel does have a chip in that game now. They found those huge oil reserves along almost along the Syrian border. So they do have some energy, some oil that they can get to a lot. It's speculated that they could almost become energy independent if they're able to tap that. Granted, it is close to a war zone at the moment, but they do have something they could go to China and say, hey, support us, and we'll supply you oil at X cost, perhaps undercutting Russia or Iran if they're able to do that. But they do have at least a bargaining chip now that they can go to China with.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, and it's going to be who. At the end of the day, it's China, right? They already have their allies in Russia. They already have their allies, in some ways, with Iran. Who's going to give them a better price?
They already have us by the balls.
They already have us by the balls in the checkbook.
Right.
But it's also going to be who gives them the better price and promise for oil. And now with Russia and Syria, and obviously Russia is going to control that oil that's in Syria, and now Iran. China's not doing this to be friends. China's looking out for China. You have to watch what they're going to do and which side they're going to pick, in my opinion.
Oh, of course. Yeah, and I think it's more likely that they stick with Russia and Iran, just because of the amount of energy that they can get from them, as opposed to Israel. But I don't know if Israel could make an argument. And do they want China as an ally? Would China be willing to align themselves with Israel against? I don't know if they necessarily have to do it against Russia, but against Iran, certainly.
Right. Second thing I wanted to follow up with Russia, and this is kind of probably not as big of a deal as people are making out of it. Russia's hanging out by some tubes, if you will, that carries the interwebs across the ocean. People are starting to become very, very concerned that they could either tap or cut said internet lines. Dan, what are your thoughts on that? Because some people are out there really making a bigger deal out of it. I don't think Russia has the stones to do it at this point.
Well, Russia's already controlling the internet in their country anyway, just like the Iranians do, just like the Chinese do, just like the majority of a lot of countries that tend to be on the more radical side, on the socialist side, communist side, etc. They're already controlling or attempting to control the information that is coming into their countries. That's because if they don't control the information, they cannot control the people. And so they're already doing that. I think what we have to be more concerned with, quite honestly, are cyber attacks on our own country. In particular, the Russians and the Chinese, who have already carried out very vicious cyber attacks on our countries, on our country. But yet, what has the Obama administration done? They have done what they always do. Obama pens a strongly worded letter, and he sends it that he will not tolerate this, and we will not put up with this, and da 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 da. And what do the Russians and the Chinese do? They just remind you. The Chinese remind us, hey, you know what? We own trillions of dollars of your debt. Do you want to continue this conversation? That's what the Chinese do.
And that's the one thing I especially brought up is severing those lines. They get more out of us when they hack our systems than they do by shutting us off to the internet or shutting off the other side. So I think if anything, I'd be more worried about them trying to access those lines to enhance their spying techniques versus severing the lines, so to speak. Clint?
Yeah, I want him to hack. I want him to hack SHR. Why is this sackhead Sean? He's very shrewd. He is all around the barnyard.
Why is Clint looking up different ways to throw rocks at hookers?
Yeah, hookers and skipping rocks. Why did he just buy that on Amazon?
Oh, he is the author. Never mind. Okay, it makes sense.
It's just interesting. Listen, it's almost one of those things where I want to see what Russia's going to do next, and not because I want them to do something next, but it is amazing to see how far they will go with this idiot in the front office, and they have no fear or regard for anything that he says, does, or threatens. So it's going to be, seriously, I would not be shocked if they ran an old ship at like high speed up onto the beach in Virginia somewhere and just like landed and be like, oops, it was an accident, and just start landing troops and hanging around doing nothing.
But then when they would call it immigration. We are here for work permit. We are dreamers.
There was a thing this weekend about, if you look, there was a video that was shot with a drone that showed these quote-unquote Syrian migrants literally marching like columns of troops into Europe, into the road. And there was an interesting statistic that came into play that if the Obama administration has its way, that, bringing in a lot of, let's face it, a lot of the majority of these quote-unquote immigrants are men, young men in their 20s and 30s, who we would normally profile as potential terrorists. But they're looking at, if they get the numbers they want, the Obama administration, and then, God forbid, if another Democratic administration gets in the White House, but if they carry forth this policy, they would bring enough immigrants in to basically have the population of Los Angeles every 3 years. You could build a new Los Angeles every 3 years with the amount of immigrants that they want to bring in, and so that brings up a very important question as to, especially with what we're seeing with Iran and with Russia and all of this is starting to come into play. All of it's coming into play, and all of it is a direct failure, a direct result of the failure of President Obama and his foreign policy and withdrawing us, like it or not. I know a lot of people don't like us being, quote unquote, the world police force or the world leader in addressing a lot of this stuff. But you are seeing what is happening now because of that, because we have been withdrawn from our leadership role in the world. It's very dangerous, guys.
Well, the problem,
it is.
Go ahead, Clint.
And then how do you establish that back? I mean, how do you get that back, particularly with Russia having the foothold that they are gaining there? And they're not going to release that very easily. So how do we regain what we've lost, or can we, without having some sort of conflict, conventional or otherwise, with Russia?
Yeah, Sean, it's absolutely right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And the big issue is, it would almost take another JFK standoff, another JFK Khrushchev moment, a standoff like that, to a territorial peeing contest, to see, okay, who's going to be the world leader here? And guys, we've been set back. I mean, it's not going to take. We keep saying, okay, we got a lot of damage to undo when we have if we can get a Republican administration in the White House. Guys, you have seen damage done to our country domestically and foreign policy wise that is going to take a couple of generations to correct. I mean, it's that serious, that much damage that was done, and God forbid that Hillary Clinton gets into office. I'll make this prediction now: if Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders is elected president of the United States, the nation of Israel will cease to exist within 8 years. I will make that prediction. It will cease to exist because there is such a movement for a Palestinian state in that area, I think, and because of everything that's coming into play in Syria, in Libya, in Iraq, in Iran, as a direct result of us not keeping up and continuing with the mission that we started and withdrawing from that leadership role, you're going to see, the nation of Israel cease to exist, guys. I fully believe that.
It's scary stuff. Clint, we got about 6 minutes left. Go ahead and start rapping.
Like rapping, like as in hip hop?
I was gonna say old school, but yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, no. Nice try, Sean. You're not gonna get me with that one again. You tried that one in Vegas, and I'd had a couple drinks, and there were glow sticks, and you're not getting me with that one again.
I didn't think you were gonna grab that microphone out of Siegfried's hand, though. That was awesome.
Well, listen, I was practically dared to do it. And when I say practically, I mean the way you guys looked at me. And particularly when Sacco said, "No, Clint, don't, what are you doing?" I mean, you guys all but told me to do it.
Hey, Dan, here on the SHR Media Network Saturday, there's kind of a big interview that's going to be airing live on this network.
Yeah, a lot of people may know that we carried the Don Smith show on SHR and Pundit Press, etc. And Don, who originates his show from Blog Talk Radio, he actually broadcasts exclusively on SHR and Pundit Press. And so he's got a major interview coming up on Saturday. He is actually going to be interviewing Donald Trump this Saturday. So kind of be looking out. We'll certainly be plastering the social media, Facebook, Twitter, with all the links and everything. But that's a big interview that Don has secured. Of course, Don does a great job securing a lot of big interviews, but certainly this interview is going to be very big for him, and so we're really looking forward to hearing it. So be watching out. So we'll be getting all the information out there on Saturday. We're actually going to carry Don's show live on SHR Media, so we'll be carrying the show live on that particular day. Saturday. The show will Don's show actually starts at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. So that would be 11 a.m. Central Time. So, like I said, we'll get all the information out there, be promoting that, and really looking forward to it. I think Don does a great job. So it's going to be interesting to see how Don is certainly more on the conservative side of the issues, where the Donald is certainly more on the moderate side. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
And of course, your show is kicking up this coming Monday. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Clint.
No, I was just going to remind our listeners for all three people in the United States who are in Mountain Time, that would be 10 a.m. and 9 a.m. on the West Coast. So,
Dan, you're kicking up Monday, this coming Monday, right?
Yeah, we actually have two big things happening next week show-wise. First of all, of course, I'm kicking off once again, bringing my show back to a daily basis, Monday through Friday. So we'll be kicking that off, and like we talked when we started off the show, Liz Loris will be joining me on Mondays and Fridays. The other big announcement is John Matthews, who has one of the most popular conservative shows in the country, the Conservative Syndicate. John is actually going to be taking his show to 5 days a week, and so that's a very big development that that SHR Media is going to be a part of in helping John with that and the Conservative Syndicate. So once again, be looking for that. His show will be airing Monday through Friday. Just so I get this right, because once again I've probably hit my limit on my hot toddies for the evening. But his show will be going 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Monday through Friday.
Oh, looking excited, really excited for it. Dan, the editor-in-chief of Pundit Press, thank you so much for joining us this evening, sir.
Thank you, Dan.
Hey, you bet.
Always
you
a pleasure.
Bet, guys.
Sackhead Clint throwing rocks at hookers down there in Fresno. You get 30 seconds if you have anything you want to add.
No.
Awesome. Hey, make sure you check out...
Seriously, because how could I top that? I mean, really.
Make sure you check out all the other great shows on the Sackheads Radio, SHR Network, Sackheads Radio Show, as well as Red Fox Radio, the exceptional one himself, as we are still playing his replay. Jersey Joe, Reaver of Common Sense, 6 shows a week. The Unpleasant Blind Guy, and others. You can hear them all on our Spreaker or the live stream at shrmedia.com and Pundit Press. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back next Wednesday at 11 on the East Coast, 8 on the West Coast. Until then, have a great rest of your week.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
The best late-night conservative talk show in America. Sackheads Radio. And listen, there are no people better on the air to give you the best in conservative talk than Sackhead Sean and Sackhead Clint. And we're working on the immigration papers for a certain other guy who happens to work here, too. But for those who are tuning in around the world to the best in late-night conservative talk, Sackheads Radio. The best late-night conservative talk show in America. In America.
And in this web was a large, I'm pretty sure it was the biggest spider I've ever seen.